Maya Halden never believed the mind could betray the body so completely. She had lived her entire life in control of patterns, cataloging, sorting, indexing reality into something understandable. Sleep was the only place she surrendered that control, and even then, only slightly. So when she woke standing barefoot on a railway platform she had never seen before, her first thought was not fear, but denial. The air around her felt wrong, as if it belonged to a world that had been left unfinished. The sky had no proper gradient, just a dull pressure of grey that seemed to lean downward instead of stretching upward. The platform beneath her feet was cold and textured with fine dust that shimmered faintly like metal shavings. Every few seconds, the lights above her flickered, but not in a rhythmic electrical way, in a hesitant, almost conscious way, like something uncertain whether it should reveal itself. She tried to step backward, but her body did not obey the intention. Instead, she moved forward slowly, deliberately, as if following instructions she could not hear. That was the first moment she understood something deeply unsettling. Her body knew where it was going, even if she did not. When she finally woke in her bed, it was with a sudden violent snap, like a thread being cut. Her lungs pulled in air too fast, her heart reacting before her mind could catch up. She sat upright, scanning her room for proof that it had been a dream. But her fingers glittered faintly with a silver dust that refused to wipe away, and that was when she realized something had followed her back. A morning brought false comfort, the kind that tries to erase what the night has written. Maya returned to her job at the Archival Institute, walking through halls filled with forgotten geography and sealed records of places that no longer existed on modern maps. Everything there was supposed to be stable, documented, finite. But that stability fractured the moment she opened a drawer and found a map that had no reason to exist. It was not catalogued. Not registered. Not even properly aged. The paper looked simultaneously new and old, like time could not decide how to treat it. The title read Sector Drift Zones, but the ink beneath it shifted slightly whenever she tried to focus on it. Lines on the map moved subtly, as if reacting to her attention. One coordinate was circled. Exactly where she had stood the night before. A strange pressure formed behind her eyes as she stared at it. Her memory of the railway platform flickered, not like a recollection, but like a reloading image. And beneath it, something else began to surface, an awareness that the map was not describing geography, but behavior. Movement. Transition. That night, she refused sleep. She drank bitter coffee until her hands trembled, forcing her body to remain upright. But exhaustion is not defeated by willpower alone. It waits. It listens. And when it finally claimed her, it did so without mercy. She did not fall asleep. She was taken, and when she opened her eyes again, she was inside a structure made entirely of glass, where every surface reflected her, but not correctly. Each reflection hesitated half a second behind her movements, as if they were learning her behavior rather than mirroring it. The glass did not break when the first reflection moved independently. It simply stopped behaving like glass. It became something softer, more uncertain, like frozen water remembering it was never meant to be solid. The reflection stepped forward. Then another. Then another. Maya backed away, but the room did not respond with distance. It responded with repetition. Space duplicated itself around her, each surface birthing another version of her presence, slightly altered, slightly wrong. And then the voices came. Not through sound. Through thought. They did not enter her mind, they revealed themselves inside it, as if they had always been there but had finally decided to speak. They called themselves the drifters. They were not people. Not in any traditional sense. They were remnants of consciousness that had slipped between structural boundaries of reality, thoughts that had lost their original bodies and learned to survive in the spaces between locations. They were not trapped, they were displaced. And Maya, they said, was becoming a passage point. The reflections around her smiled without synchronization. Some smiled too early. Some too late. One did not smile at all but instead watched her with an intensity that felt like recognition rather than observation. The realization came slowly, like something sinking into deep water. She was not entering their world. Their world was entering hers. Dr. Elias Corvin did not react the way Maya expected. There was no surprise when she described the glass room. No disbelief when she spoke of the drifters. Instead, there was recognition, calm, controlled, and unsettling in its certainty. His office was too organized, as if disorder had never been allowed to exist inside it. Maps lined the walls, but none of them were normal. They displayed overlapping geographies, places folded into places, coordinates that contradicted themselves. "You're not sleepwalking," he said quietly, almost clinically. "You're sinking." He explained it as though he had rehearsed it before. Layers of cognition. Parallel perceptual drift. Minds occasionally aligning with adjacent structural realities. It sounded like science attempting to describe something it did not fully believe in. But what disturbed Maya most was not his explanation. It was that he had expected her. When she looked closer, she noticed her name written in one of his research logs. Dated before their meeting. Before her first episode. Before the map. As she left his office, she felt the air around her shift slightly, like something in the building had adjusted its awareness of her presence. Behind her, Dr. Corvin opened a drawer and stared at another version of the same map she had found. Except his was older. And more complete. The city she entered next was not stable enough to be called a place. It behaved like a living system pretending to be architecture. Buildings expanded subtly when unobserved, contracting when looked at directly. Streets shifted position when she blinked, as if responding to her attention span. There were people, but none of them cast shadows. That absence was more disturbing than any visible threat. It suggested something fundamental was missing from their existence. One figure approached her. It had the outline of a human but not the definition. Its face was not blank, it was inconsistent, constantly borrowing fragments of familiarity from people she could almost remember. "You are becoming structure," it communicated without sound. The words did not enter her ears. They formed in her awareness, like memory being installed rather than spoken. The city responded to her fear. Corridors rearranged themselves, not to trap her, but to guide her inward. Everything felt intentional, like she was part of a system learning how she moved through it. At the center of the city, she found a plaza where the sky flickered like an unstable signal. And in that flicker, she saw something watching back. Not a creature, a condition. Something that existed only when observed incorrectly. Dr. Corvin appeared without transition, as if he had been part of the environment all along and had only now decided to be visible. His expression was no longer clinical. It was tired. Heavy with knowledge that had stopped being theoretical. "They are not invading," he said. "They are leaking." He explained that the drifters were not seeking escape in the way a prisoner does. They were seeking coherence. A stable pathway between fractured layers of existence. And Maya, her mind, her condition, her sync state, was becoming the only viable interface. The silver dust was now everywhere. On her skin. On her clothes. On the walls of her apartment when she returned briefly. It formed patterns when she was not looking directly at it. Geometry that resembled instructions rather than randomness. That night, she did not sleep. Instead, she fell inward. The world around her folded into a rotating threshold of light and silence. The drifters gathered, no longer distant observers but present forces. Their presence was not threatening, but absolute. Like gravity discovering it could think. "Open," they said. But what they meant was not a door. They meant a decision. Everything collapsed into simultaneity. Maya stood in a space that could not decide what it was. Every surface flickered between existence and non-existence. Time did not move forward, it tested directions, as if unsure which way was correct. Dr. Corvin was there, but unstable. Versions of him overlapped, some younger, some older, all speaking different truths at once. "You were never the subject," he said. "You were the convergence point." The drifters surrounded her, not closing in, but stabilizing around her presence. Like they had found the missing variable they had been calculating across impossible distances, reality thinned further. And Maya understood something that had no language attached to it. She was not trapped between worlds. She was the point where worlds stopped agreeing. She did not open the door. She did not close it. She remained inside the moment where both outcomes existed equally. And in doing so, sleepwalking stopped being an accident. It became her permanent state of being.